All right, hello, Facebook. This is I'm the Executive Director of Historic Athens. I want to thank you for joining us for our discussion today. This is our standard 1 o'clock episode of this moment in history of 19 in Athens, Georgia. Before we begin, just a few notes. First of all, as we've been noting on a few episodes this week, we have noticed that there have been some audio lag issues with Facebook Live. We're not really certain what's causing it, but I wish I had knowledge I could twist on my end, things I could do to improve all the audio. What I can promise you is that if you'll just stay with us, after a few minutes, the audio tends to improve. And so, especially once we bring our guests on. So just stay with us for just a moment. Don't need to comment about any audio issues. We'll get that fixed as soon as we possibly can. I also want to say that this episode exists more for more than just for you to watch. It's also something that you can experience by sharing comments, questions, stuff like that. I'm going to rush our guest on the line just because of my experience that tends to fix audio issue. So let's hope we get some luck with that. Let's go ahead and bring on Dustin Gannon right. All right. Hi, Dustin. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How's it going?
Good. So generally what we experience is the audio issues magically resolve themselves shortly after we get you on the line. And so let's hope that that trend continues. Again, our apologies to anyone out in the audience who may be experiencing some of the audio lag. It just seems to be a side effect of half the world being on the internet all at the same time. So, Dustin, typically before we bring a guest on, okay, good. I see a note here that the audio seems to have cleared out. Thank you, Jeremy. Dustin, I wanted to bring you on as quickly as possible, so I didn't say part of the opening spiel since I wanted to get the audio fixed first. But we do like our guests, anyone who's tuning in right now, to know the purpose of this program is twofold. One is we want you to hear today's interview right now in the moment as it's happening for those of you that are tuning in live or that might be experiencing it later in the week here through Facebook. Today's interview, though, also serves the purpose of creating a historical archive for future generations that are seeking to understand how COVID-19 affected life in Athens, Georgia. And so if you'd like to be part of that historic record, then you can just share a comment below this video. As long as we're still live, I can bring it on the screen. Dustin and I can address it live. It might be a question, it might be a thought, it might be a word of encouragement for Dustin. Whatever it is, definitely share in the comment section, and I'll show you just what that will look like in case you're tuning in for the first time. So when Jeremy let us know that the audio had cleared out, I can bring that right on the screen. So if anyone has any questions or comments for Dustin today, please do so. Dustin, I know I'm going to have you introduce yourself here in a moment, but just for our audience's sake. So I have the pleasure of getting to know Dustin as a neighbor, but Dustin is many things. He is a captain in the Army Reserve. He is a paramedic, firefighter. He also is a musician, which one of the ways I got to get to know him was through last year's Historic Athens Porch Fest event. And so Dustin does many, many things. We're looking forward to talking to him about all of those things, or as much as time allows. Dustin, why don't you go ahead and jump in and just introduce yourself to our audience and explain your relationship to Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, sure. So first off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I more or less grew up around Athens. I moved to the Athens area in, I think, 1991. We had moved from California. My dad was in the military as well. And yeah, I mean, I remember even at a young age just immediately falling in love with the city. And I more or less stayed here for quite a long time in my younger years. I went to school, for high school, I went to Oglethorpe County, which is just a stone's throw away. And then I ended up moving here shortly thereafter, and I attended Athens Technical College, and then I transferred to University of Georgia, which is where I finished college in 2011. So I've kind of grown up in the area. All of my formative years were pretty much spent here. And then there was some time where I spent about just under 5 years on active duty for the Army. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, in Columbus, and then I ended up getting stationed abroad in Germany. Did some time in Afghanistan, came back to Germany, and then in 2016 I left the active Army, and I decided to actually move back to Athens because I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life at that point. I just needed a little bit of a change of pace. And but I did know that I wanted to play music. So, there's no better place in the entire world to start a band than Athens, Georgia, just because the infrastructure for artists is just, it's all here and it's incredible. There's a lot of support for it. So moved back, ended up using my VA home loan and bought a house just literally right around the corner from Tommy in the Newtown neighborhood. And so I bartend part-time, and one of my favorite regulars is a firefighter, and he came to the bar and he had his little firefighter just like ball cap on, and I was like, what's that like? And he goes, oh, it's the best job in the world and they're hiring, so you should do it. So on kind of a whim, I applied and I became a firefighter for Gwinnett County, which is about 30 minutes away from here. So, I went through about 18 months of training with that. So I'm cross-trained as a paramedic and firefighter. So for Gwinnett County, we run EMS calls, we run the emergency ambulance transport system, and we run the fire protection services. So I'm trained to do both. So basically, our schedule is like 24 hours on, 48 hours off. I work 24 hours on either the ambulance or the fire engine. And then my next shift, I do the reverse usually. So, other than that, I play music. I did do what I came back here to do, I guess. I started a band called Vision Video, and that band is named after a now defunct video rental store that I'm sure most people will remember, that were here from any time in the early 90s through 2017. It was just a really great place. It was a very communal atmosphere. They had this great deal. It was $5 for $5, 5 movies, 5 nights. And they had all the like cult weird stuff. So that, I'm obsessed with horror movies. So that was like my place, So we named it after that just to kind of preserve this sense of nostalgia, which the band is a very like 80s post-punk sort of gothic rock band. We sound a lot like The Cure or like Joy Division. So that's like my big project now, and it's doing very well. And a lot of it's because of this online community that we have now. And I've just been really aggressively putting it out there. So forgive me for shamelessly plugging my band, but
no, we want you to do that. That's great.
Awesome.
I have to tell you, and by the way, do you prefer Dusty or Dustin?
Dusty's fine. That's kind of my colloquial name, I guess.
Let's do it. Well, if someone called me Thomas, I'd flinch. So I get it.
Yeah.
So right now I see we have Sam Ledford, another one of our Newtown neighbors, is watching this right now. She just said she loves Vision Video. We want you to plug any and all things. That's cool. Everyone doing these interviews is plugging any and all things. It's also a great way to get to know you. Dusty, I want you to know, most people, if they have an alter ego, they have one. I think you're developing several personalities at this point. But it really is interesting. You almost every time I see you, whether it's a photo or in real life, you do seem to inhabit these separate, not necessarily personas, but almost like entirely. You have different wardrobe, you have different approaches to things. What's at the core essence of who you are that's kind of the through line through all of those things?
I mean, I think a lot of stuff with, especially with the band and sort of the gothic aesthetic that I tend to inhabit from time to time. I mean, like on a day-to-day basis, I'm in jeans and a t-shirt like normally.
Right.
But I mean, I do think that that aesthetic, I love that aesthetic. Like I kind of grew up in that, subculture of like the goth subculture or whatever.
Right.
But that aesthetic to me now is like its own art form, because it is very much so. Like when I'm on stage, or like even when I DJ, like we do a local goth night here in Athens, that's a lot of fun. But when I do that stuff and I'm all in this, makeup and the torn clothing and all just like the strange stuff, that to me is very much so, like you nailed it. It is a total alter ego, and I have to kind of inhabit a very specific headspace in order to project that as art, and it's not just fashion. Which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with like dressing away just for fashion orientation, but to me, it is definitely it is the exercising of like demons, to be literal. I mean, it is this kind of insane look that is the projection of things that I've gone through via the army or the fire department, and I get to channel that, what could be negative perspective and energy, into an art and into something productive and cathartic. And I think that's kind of the abiding sense of that. But I mean, yeah, most people, it's so funny to me. Like I'll be walking around Athens, during like normal times, and we'll have done like a goth night or Vision Video we'll have played, and people will be like, "Hey, you're that guy that was in that really insane amount of makeup and like fishnets." And I'm like, "How did you even remotely recognize me?" Because it's like so night and day. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's an important aspect of what I'm trying to create and trying to put out there.
I'm interested in how that affects the community of people that surround you in your life, because I'll just, as a personal aside, so, for years I was a hip hop artist, and, specifically focused on battle rap for years. And so I would, just like we're talking about, I mean, I had different pockets of my life. I had my life within the hip hop community. I had my life at my day job. I had my life in civic organizations I belonged to. And each of those lives, these days, they overlap a lot more. And I've had to work intentionally to sew them together. But sometimes I'd have like friends over here that have absolutely nothing to do with the friends I have over here, or trying to invite the friends from this group to my concert. I mean, it's an odd thing to juggle. So how does that, are you the same way? Do you have kind of pockets of people that don't have anything much in common with the other pockets of people you have in your life?
Definitely.
Right now we're all in social isolation in different ways. And so I'm wondering kind of who's the community around you right now?
Yeah, I mean, so as far as the pockets interacting, it is very rare, but it does happen. On one of I think it was our second or third show, we played at the 40 Watt, and I had invited my crew from my fire station to come to that show. And it was just like blatantly obvious that it was not an environment that they were used to, but they really had a great time. I mean, it was awesome. They were like, this was so much fun. We loved the music, and like, we ended up like having a couple drinks afterwards and just hanging out. And it was, just a really good bonding thing that we had that night. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely like two worlds that clash. I mean, there are people in my station. There's like a couple of guys that like don't get it at all. They don't, they don't berate me outside of just like basic, kind of chastisement for the fun of it. But they definitely have like a hard time wrapping their heads around it. And that's fine, and that's to be expected. I certainly don't expect people to just like get it. But yeah, my sense of community has been very interesting, because like I am hyper social person. And
Right.
so with all of this, it's been really tough for me, as I'm sure it is for many, many people out there. But the one good thing is that I do get to go to the fire station and work with that crew, and it's a great crew. These guys and girls are just awesome people, and so there's a lot of like socialization that has taken, which normally, I mean, like I like those people, but I don't normally hang out with them, or like, it has definitely facilitated a different aspect in my life because of the lack of socialization in person with people that I normally spend time with. So that's kind of, it's definitely been an interesting evolution of that, so to speak.
Totally. Yeah. The quote that comes to mind that you might be familiar with, but it definitely helps in situations like these, is there's this Walt Whitman quote where he says, do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I'm vast and contain multitudes. So it's great to interview someone that is vast and contains multitudes. I also shared a comment here by Lindsay Brannon. We love Lindsay. Lindsay's with the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce, and really great on the ground person that loves and understands Athens. But Lindsay just shared post-punk goth rock. Cannot wait to listen this weekend. So Dusty, if somebody wants to check out any of the Vision Video stuff, I know that you've had some recent releases and things like that. Where should people go to listen to the music?
Yeah, so we're working on further releases, but at the time we just put out our debut single. So we put out a 2-track single, and they are two of like my favorite songs on the upcoming debut LP that we're putting out at some point, probably late summer, early fall, if I had to guess. It's going to take a little while, but we're trying to like gather funds. So if you want to listen, you can listen basically on any streaming platform. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on iTunes, Google Music, basically anything, any major platform will be on there. So you just type in Vision Video. The single is called In My Side. And we also have a website. It's sort of our virtual merch booth. And that's just simply visionvideoband.com. We have like a couple of really cool shirts, and we actually are selling vinyl records of the 7-inch. It's just like, one song per each side, little 7-inch record of the single, and we have that available there. And I run and operate that website, so like every cent that you spend for that goes right to the band, and that helps us dramatically to get this this LP out, which we really want to put it out, but it takes, unfortunately, a lot of money to release things in this day and age. So yeah, please come listen. We've had an incredible response. So this is kind of a funny side anecdote to this whole bit about music. So we put out the single, and you sort of spread it through publications, and you don't really know like what path it's going to start diverging down and where it's going to land as far as audiences. We are doing really well in Brazil. I don't know why. We have thousands and thousands of people sharing it and playing it and commenting on it in Brazil. So I'm starting to learn like a little bit of Portuguese, because like we no longer have the option of not going to Brazil, because like we would do just very well down there. So it's been kind of funny. You never know where your music is going to kind of take root and manifest, especially with the internet.
I want to share something here. So first of all, I showed the URL on the screen here. It'll be in the comments section for those of you that want to visit it. It's visionvideoband.com. If you're watching this through one of our watch parties on my personal page, if you head over to the Historic Athens page, you'll find that main comment thread and be able to jump in there. I also want to acknowledge that while Kelly Gertz, we know, is the mayor of Athens, I think the unofficial, informal, longtime shadow mayor of Athens is Mark Weathersby. And so Mark jumped in to say, Dusty Gannon, love you. That's major praise from someone very important.
Love you too, buddy.
So Mark, Mark's incredible. So it's interesting. I just have to share something just because it just talks about the Athens we live in right now, in case future generations are trying to understand how Athens works. it's funny what you've described with the Brazil situation, because years and years ago now, I managed a screamo act called A Bitter Fight Against Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
This was, I was an undergrad, and they were this really great group of guys from Madison County who, I'm sorry, from Madison, and they just really blew up and went within a year from playing like an American Legion to like the Masquerade and Georgia Theater and stuff. And bizarrely, at one point when we were checking the website data, we also found that they had like this bizarrely large following in Brazil that was completely disproportionate to what was going on in Athens. I mean, in Athens, they had a few hundred people that would crowd into the shows, but something's going on down in South America, man. They get it.
Yeah.
Especially or to Brazil. So anyway, okay, so Dusty, we had a follow-up Mark comment I'm going to show. You guys are the best. No, Mark, you're the best. That's the only time you've ever been wrong in your life, Mark. You're the best. Dusty, one of the reasons I wanted to take all this time to really kind of tease apart the various things you do is all of those things are now having to be done differently. They're all affected by the situation we're in right now. And, I mean, even a small example of that is when you mentioned that you're a horror movie nerd. I'm an enormous horror movie nerd. I loved the $5 deal at Vision Video. As soon as you said that, there's that natural thing that you want to do where you go, oh, I didn't know you had this in common. You should come over and we should figure out which ones, are our favorites and whatnot. Can't do that right now, right? Can't have people over, can't have those kind of impulsive moments. So let's kind of tease through these one at a time. Paramedic, firefighter, musician. If we have some time to talk about how it might be affecting your reserve service, I'd love to touch on that. But how is COVID-19 affecting all of these things that you do?
Sure. So I guess I'll speak mostly on the paramedicine portion because the fire services stuff hasn't really changed. I mean, that is just kind of random. Fires just sort of occur out of nowhere. I mean, there's not like an influx, with a few exceptions, like around Thanksgiving with just cooking fires and stuff like that. So I'll speak mostly about paramedicine, and then I'll kind of segue to music. So with paramedicine, it has made life extremely interesting for us, I think, to put it lightly. So in the beginning, when the lockdown started and we started to really understand that this was really going to affect everything, because we had a little bit of insight, as it was coming, because like the Georgia Department of Health and what have you was, feeding us information, preparing us. So, I kind of had this general idea that, okay, this is getting really serious and this is going to affect everything that we do. So the first couple of weeks of the lockdown, and when it was like really here and we had confirmed that it was here, it was very scary. I'm not a germaphobe, but I definitely have like diagnosed clinical OCD. So like, it's kind of a nightmare for me to just, because I constantly think about, like, when I'm at work, I'm like, okay, did you touch that? Okay, I need to clean my hands. And, like, I'm just very methodical, which is good in a way because it helps me stay safe. But the first couple of weeks were just so stressful. And it was, it was just nerve-wracking to get on the ambulance. And, because I've run so many COVID patients, I don't really even know how many at this point. But when you're in the back of the ambulance, you're in this like 13-foot by 10-foot box, metal box with one ventilation fan that kind of sucks everything back. And, we're in full, like we wear a plastic gown, an N95 respirator mask, eye protection, gloves, and if they're coughing, I'll wear like a face shield. But, we all took a very nihilistic view of our own safety in the beginning, because to that end, it reminded me a lot of my time in Afghanistan, where, I mean, it sounds kind of morbid, but when I was in Afghanistan, I woke up every day and I just was like, well, I'm probably going to die today, and that's all right. And as soon as I accepted that, I was able to sort of move beyond it and do my job as a rifle platoon leader. There's actually a really great scene in the miniseries Band of Brothers where this captain is talking to a private, and he's like, you need to accept that you are already dead, and then you can start functioning. And I actually went through the very similar kind of realization early on in that deployment. So it was kind of a similar, not as extreme, but a similar regard on the ambulance, where we would just be like, well, we're going to get it. And we kind of still joke about it, like we use a lot of dark humor in the fire services and EMS to help us process what we deal with. And, it's like, well, I'm going to get it. So like, we just, you just accept it and you just move on. But fortunately, to my knowledge, I have not been tested yet, because I have not shown any symptoms, and I haven't had a full-on exposure, which would be, the lack of a PPE where you're interacting with a positive patient. They consider that a exposure. So as we moved on into the months, it's been now a couple months, I've gotten pretty much totally comfortable with it. It's still very stressful, and I can tell when I come home. We run a lot at night where I am. I work in the Suwannee area, so it gets really busy at night with medical calls. So a lot of the times I'm up most of the night anyway. But I've noticed, like, when I come off shift, normally I would have a little bit more energy in normal times, but now I end up sleeping like for hours of the day just to kind of recoup that energy to focus on, music and writing music and on the insane amount of social media management that I've been doing for the band. So I just have to sleep a lot more. So that stress and anxiety is for sure there for us. And I think that, a lot of firefighters are, they're like tough people and they're not going to admit to it. But I definitely had to realize, like, okay, you're stressed out because of this, and you've got to do things that, make you feel better. So I spent a lot of time running and working out and just trying to exercise and be healthy as possible, considering the circumstances. So, but yeah, so as far as the COVID patients themselves, though, it hasn't been like this. It's not, I'm trying to figure out the right way of saying this. It's not like we are constantly transporting COVID patients. I don't want people to like have this image like where we are not experiencing what they experience in New York City. In New York City, people are like literally living on top of each other. There is nowhere to go. And that's why, they just, it exploded there because they're so densely populated, and, there just weren't proper precautions taken on a large level in our country. We sort of let this one slip through the gates, in my opinion. That's not the opinion of officially, or, but I truly believe that we should have acted way earlier, and we would already be much through this if we had locked down in January. But I think it's important to move forward and not belabor the past, because we can talk about that all day. But the patients that we do run, they're sick. They're usually much older. I have run a 7-year-old girl, and I've gone on calls with younger people. Usually they don't go to the hospital. Usually you go into the house and you just make contact with them. I run their vital signs and I say, hey, look, you're sick. You very most likely do have it. I don't have the ability to test them, so I don't really know. But based on their presentation, signs and symptoms, there's some stuff you can kind of look for that's not as glaringly obvious outside of just being sick. But, and I tell them, look, there's a good chance that you have it. But unless you're having acute difficulty breathing, whereas, you can note, like, just sitting there, you can no longer pull enough air to where you feel like you are adequately breathing, then you need to go to the hospital. So, a lot of them don't go because they're healthy, and, there's not really a reason to send them to the hospital where they're going to take time and resources away from the very limited amount of physicians and nurses and techs and all the people that make, our emergency system work. So yeah, so I was thinking about it this morning, actually. That's kind of the nefarious nature of this disease too, is that for you and I, if we got it, we may have already had it, didn't know it, or if we do get it, it's probably not going to be a big deal at all. But the people that are at risk are so severely at risk because, we don't have the ability to withstand it at all. Like, you have a natural ability to fight off the normal flu viruses because you have the framework. So if it mutates, which it does every year, you can still fight it pretty easily because your body has some frame of reference, like your antibodies can work with it. But this is, it is a novel virus, and it so aggressively sweeps through. Like, and most of this is stuff that people already know, but like nursing homes, there's a nursing home in my our district that we cover that, it swept through real quick, and a couple of people died, right off the bat. But fortunately for them, they're pretty competent staff. They locked it down. They clean like extremely. Their residents are still in lockdown. They can't leave their rooms. That's, kind of really sad. But, and then, another thing that I thought was sort of an interesting point of why this is incredibly tragic that a lot of people aren't seeing is that, so when we run a serious, significant emergency, COVID or otherwise, and usually it's something else, like a heart attack, cardiac arrest, strokes, significant traumatic injuries, a lot of car accidents, these are stuff that we see all the time. One of the hardest things for me as a paramedic has been, so let's say, for example, your parent has a stroke, right? And you catch it quickly, and, they're doing okay insofar as somebody having a stroke. They're not, dying right then and there, but, they will if they don't get treated. So we assess them. Okay, we realize this person's having a stroke, and we get them loaded up to the ambulance. Well, normally, the family says, okay, well, can we ride with you? Yep, get in, let's go. We have to tell the family, like, in so many words, say goodbye, because you cannot go in unless they are sure that that family member is basically going to pass away. And so they very quickly realize, so it's especially hard on the calls where it's like, well, we don't really know what's going on, but your loved one is in trouble and they need to go to the hospital. People very immediately and suddenly realize, like, I may never see this person again. And we see it like very regularly. And so you have to be extremely sort of like diplomatic and kind and compassionate without straight up saying, like, hey, say your final goodbye, because that's too abrasive. You don't want to scare them because it's probably not their final goodbye, but it could be. And that's a very emotionally taxing and difficult process. And that's, I think, why it's been so hard on a lot of emergency workers in the medical field. But again, it's something that we have acclimated to that, and we have adjusted, we're resilient, and that, again, a lot of that for me is like exercise, working out, making music, doing things in my time that make me happy and make me able to withstand the brunt of that storm. But it's definitely something that I never conceived as like a thing that I would handle, because I've only been doing this job. I've only been in the field as a paramedic and firefighter for 2 years. So, this is like, it's just crazy timing. But at the same regard, not by no means am I enjoying this, obviously, but it is so fascinating to me to be doing what I do in this time, and just being able to see this image of it that most people don't have. So to kind of wrap that up, I also do want to say one thing that I think is really important, that a lot of people definitely need to hear, and that's don't be scared out of your mind about this. Be vigilant, be careful, be cautious, do what you know is right and smart, but don't freak out every day. If you're feeling intense amounts of anxiety, I highly recommend talking to somebody. I talk to a therapist every month, just in normal times, just because of my job. But,
right.
Just find something that will help you relax, because we're going to get through this. Like, this is going to end. This is not permanent. And one day, like, this will be a memory, and it'll just be like, man, remember that horrible time? And then we can just kind of move on from it. But I just think it's like really important, because I know a few people in my interpersonal life that have not handled it very well, and and I really hope that people can just get some sense of calm, because it's going to be okay. I guarantee that. So,
Dusty, I really, sometimes on these interviews, I like to point out that I'm not a professional interviewer. I'm a nonprofit executive director that is masquerading as an interviewer. So I don't really have the skill to give an adequate response to what you just shared, but I do want to say thank you for sharing it, and all of the facets that you touched on, including the guidance. I'll reiterate, I see a counselor. I think folks should, we know that we go see the dentist for our teeth and the doctor when we're sick, but I think that it's always important, especially at times like these, where folks might be navigating new levels of duress, to consider talking to people. A few quick things before we move on to the next area. So first of all, Alex Sam's one of our regular viewers and really phenomenal local Athenian. I'm going to share this anyway, even though he said to keep it a secret. You put it in the comments, Alex. But Alex said, listening to In My Side now and love it. Keep it a secret because I'm a 55-year-old original Athenian born in Athens. General Tommy, this is an ongoing thing. And I moved to Athens when I was 5, but I'll never be an Athens native because I wasn't born at one of the local hospitals. It will ruin the band's image. Alex, you're a pretty cool dude. I think it'll be just fine. I'm sure that Dusty's not going to turn you away at the door.
It'll be okay. I appreciate it, though.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And Dustin or Dusty, I just need one quick second to thank our annual sponsors, and then we'll come back to this conversation. So I see we have a good amount of folks tuned in over the course of a couple different streams. So don't go anywhere. Give us just a second. This conversation is still ongoing. So very briefly, we do always want to acknowledge our annual sponsors. That includes the names and logos that you see here. These are the folks that keep our lights on and keep us in business at Historic Athens. We're a 52-year-old nonprofit committed to celebrating and conserving community heritage here in Athens, Georgia. That could be a building that we're trying to preserve. It could be a story or a recipe or some important facet of Athens that we're trying to make sure that we keep going. I know, for example, if you visit our Facebook page today, we just were the recipient of a really great video on the history of the tree that owns itself. And so we made sure to blast that out. So we really appreciate everyone that keeps us going. Our sponsors are invaluable, including the Dan T. and Sarah Weish Coonan Foundation Fund at the Athens Area Community Foundation, who made this week possible. We want to thank Dan and Sarah, and we want to make sure that we thank the wonderful folks at the Athens Area Community Foundation. I just put that on screen. So we really appreciate the Coonans and the Athens Area Community Foundation. I also want to say that for those of you that are watching this that would like more programming like this, more public programming, please consider consider, I'm sorry, I have to share. I got Tom Hodgson in here needling me. Thanks for admitting that, Tommy. Thanks, Tom. You are the one and true authority on Athens gatekeeping, as well you should be. You're the cooler Tom. But if you want to support us, membership begins at only $5 a month. We depend on our donor members. I promise you, 52 years or not, our bills still come every month. And if you want us to keep going, we really need your support, especially at times like these. I also am going to quickly flash on screen this list. This list represents the 55 interviews we're doing as part of this project. You may see some names on there that you're interested in hearing from. You may see some names that you wish you hadn't missed. The good news is all of these videos are kept in the archive of our video page on our Facebook page. So feel free to visit that section to see some of the past interviews with elected officials, community leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, community organizers, all kinds of excellent folks, including Dusty today. So I want to make sure that that's clear. Also at 2 o'clock, part of our operation is running the Athens Welcome Center. And so the wonderful folks over there have worked to provide their own new live cast that's available at 2 each day. It's a combination of tours of Athens historical sites. So they're welcoming you to those sites. And then live from the Welcome Center itself, although the Welcome Center isn't currently open, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Caitlin Short, one of our staff members there, has been doing virtual workshops. So we really encourage you to visit that. One last thing I'm going to flash on screen before we get back to Dusty is this. We do have some shirts now available thanks to Satisfactory Printing. It's a great, quick way for you to support what we're doing. We've had some really generous contributions from local artists that have allowed us to start this series. You can see that there's one that features different landmark buildings of Athens, Rock Springs Historic District and Boulevard Historic District. These 3 are only the first 3. If each shirt reaches 24 orders per shirt, we'll be able to do more shirts celebrating other historic districts and historic sites around Athens. And we've kept the prices affordable. And so please visit. You'll see the link here on our Facebook page, or you can go to historicathens.com to pick one of those up. And we'd really appreciate it. So Dusty, continuing our conversation here, you mentioned that you were going to touch on how this has also affected your life as a musician. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So when this all started, we were about to start pretty aggressively touring as a lead up to what we thought might be a release of, our single that we did put out. But we were kind of hoping to put out the full length record sometime this summer. And so we were getting ready to just sort of like go all over the place in the US. And, we had all these shows laid on. Obviously, like every single last show that we had this year through October has been canceled. And I honestly don't foresee us playing much of anything this year in a live sense. Maybe October and then on we could figure some things out. But we did a really quick pivot, sort of shifting from, that, okay, we don't have any shows now, but we still have this record to put out. And we still have, we're a brand new band. This all started in 2018. So, we've only been really playing live for a little over a year. And it became very obvious to me that I was going to have to start spending a lot of time on getting the music out there in a virtual sense. And so I bartend part-time at the Georgia Theater, and that job is gone now. And there's no foreseeable time when the theater is going to be able to reopen because it's an 1,100 person capacity venue. So I suddenly found myself with an excess of time, whereas normally I would be working or playing with the band. I have this time now. So I said to myself, well, I'm just going to spend this time on really aggressively promoting in the least like intrusive method that I can online. So I just started to kind of find groups of people online that would like that kind of music, and I would just share it. And I would just be like, hey, we have these influences, this is what our band sounds like. And that started to really catch on. And, I think, there's obviously an aspect of it where the music spoke for itself. and people just liked it a lot. So it started really moving along. But I started to look at like different sort of unusual methods of getting our band out there. So in keeping with the goth rock aesthetic that I do for the band, so one of the things that I ended up doing was I got invited to this makeup group. It's like a cosmetic group online, and it's like 18,000 members, and they literally do live tutorials. They, live stream tips and tricks, and it's just like a really lovely community of mostly women. But it's kind of funny because I go in there and it's more catered to like goth and alternative makeup. So it's a little bizarre, but I shared it in there because I was like, hey, I did this look for the day because I'm still practicing my makeup here. I have a huge inordinate amount of makeup that I have in my bathroom. And so I was sharing it through methods like that. And it was just catching on because they loved it. They're like, oh, Dusty looks insane. And we love his makeup, but like, let's listen to his music. And I was just really interested in trying to figure out ways to like organically share our music without just like straight advertising, because advertising is hit or miss. You can put something out there, but it doesn't force anybody to engage with your material. So I was just trying to find like more interpersonal ways of sharing the music, and to that end, these like sort of abstract or different methods of getting our music out there. It's done so well. I'm a metrics guy, so I look at numbers all the time. And, just the other day, we had streamed the two songs on Spotify around 30,000 times, and that's in 2 months. So, that's for an unsigned independent band that nobody had really heard of. I think that's pretty good. And I don't know that we would have had that much exposure and that much opportunity to get our music out there with everybody being at home and being on their phones and on their computers, just like looking for more content. So to that end, it's been good for the band. And but then it's tough because you have to kind of, there's so much content being flooded online right now because there's so many bands. There's so many people out there just putting stuff out there. So, the other aspect of what I'm doing for Vision Video is, I've kind of gotten into like these really silly things. Like I am a 33-year-old grown man and I am on TikTok now. And funny enough, like about 30 something hours ago, I made a TikTok video. If you want to go check it out, it's really funny. It's if you go into the TikTok app, it's Vision Video Band. And I made this video and it like went viral, and it's like so completely absurd, but it's just like me in my firefighter gear. And there's this thing called the Wipe It Down challenge where you like wipe across the screen on a mirror. And then when you rewipe, it's like you in some contrasted whatever. So I did like my goth rock attire, and then you wipe back and it's like me back in my firefighter gear, and it's just like blown up. So I've been doing stuff like that too. And a lot of that's just like, cause it's like a neat little creative way. But again, I'm sort of promoting the band in that way. So if you're a musician that's watching this, I highly recommend just like look at different ways of utilizing social media to promote your work, because it's really, you have to do it that way right now. I'm not saying you have to like embarrass yourself publicly like I do every day on these social media platforms, but there's some really cool opportunities. And if anybody wants to like talk to me about it, by all means, send me a message. You can go onto the Facebook page, or even better, our Instagram. I'm mostly on our Instagram, which is again Vision Video Band is our handle. If you want to send me a message, I'll pretty much give you kind of a rundown of what I've done for the band, and you might find some value from that. So, I mean, and I'm by no means an expert. I'm learning trial by fire on a lot of this stuff. So, but moving forward, it's just so unfortunate because we won't be able to really play live until, it's safe to do so. But we're definitely going to be playing some live stream stuff I'm working on like a smaller, scaled down solo version of that I'll be doing very soon here. So keep an eye out for that. But I think as things get a little safer, we'll do like full band performances, and we're so ready to start playing and practicing again. And it's just so unfortunate that I think that everybody that's in any kind of cultural arts that requires you to kind of be in person to get the full effect is experiencing the same sort of thing. So again, and kind of in keeping with what I was saying earlier, just don't give up hope. Like, this will end. When this is over, music is going to explode. Live performance is going to explode because people are going to be so absolutely ready to get that experience again. So we just got to give it time. And I think that this is just a great time to like hone your skill as a musician, hone your abilities, develop your platforms to get your music out there, and just keep in mind that it'll be over one day, and we'll all be out there playing again, and it's going to be awesome. Not sure if I'm hearing you.
No, you shouldn't be. Dusty, you'll relate because I know you live only a street away from me, but the train went by and it was so loud I had my mic muted.
Oh.
Anyway, it's become a regular cameo on each of these episodes that the train is going by.
Oh, yeah.
I said, speaking of awesome, since you'd used that word, I made sure to share in the comment section below this video a link to the YouTube video for your Porch Fest performance. And so if folks want to see one of your
cool.
alter egos and then also see you in action in a historic Athens event, they can do that at the comment section below. Also, I wanted to just share this comment from Alex Sams. One more, Alex said, more seriously, thank you, Dusty, for bringing a sense of reality to the effects of the virus. And I do appreciate that a lot. The concept of your both need to comfort the people that you're interacting with as a paramedic, but also the practical limitations that are required. That sounds impossibly difficult. And so I appreciate you sharing that for the record, but also I'm sure I speak for a lot of us watching when we say that we're thankful that we have people like you out there thinking compassionately and empathetically, even if that is very taxing, as I'm sure it is.
Well, thank you,
Dusty. Of course. I mean, us saying that is literally the least we can do. Dusty, as we wrap up our conversation today, there are 3 questions we like to ask each of our guests.
Sure.
And so I'd like to get to those now. The first question is a little bit lighter than some of the other discussions we've had so far. And it's this. So if you woke up tomorrow, all of this was somehow over. There was no need to shelter in place. All of our favorite Athens businesses, including the ones that are doing a great job of curbside, but every business, every venue, everything was open. And you had the day off to do whatever you wanted. Where would you go? How would you spend your day?
Oh boy, that's a good one. So I would definitely get up early, probably go to maybe Walker's and grab a coffee. And I would bring my laptop because I'd be booking flights to Brazil for the band. I would, oh man, that's so good. I would probably get lunch at maybe Thai Spoon. It's usually my favorite lunch spot. Get some pad Thai. It's super spicy and good. And maybe grab, if it's nice out, grab a cocktail. I would probably zip across town over to Old Pal and get like an old fashioned or like Blue Sky and get some old scotch or something. And then dinner at, let's see, where would I go to dinner right now? Any place. either Five or The Place are two of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, that steak at Five. Oh man, I'm trying to eat less meat gradually, but it's just so hard. But definitely, I love that place. Got a great bar too, and catch a show at Caledonia and Booty Boys on the Rooftop Saturday night.
Yeah.
So that would be my day. That's a pretty good day.
Yeah. Steak and wrapping up the day at Booty Boys. It's hard to imagine a better overall day than that. Okay. Second to last question. So when we come out of this, it's likely we're not only going to be coming out of a pandemic, we're also going to be coming out of a recession. And traditionally, after a recession like this, people are very eager to build again, to redevelop again, to leave their mark. That can get complicated, though. One of our functions is historic preservation, and one of the concerns in the historic preservation community is, does that mean suddenly a bunch of historic things are going to become endangered? Because that typically happens when people are eager to just build it at such a great scale. So what we've been doing is we've been asking each of our guests to name some of their favorite historic places in Athens, just places that you hope that if somebody's watching this 50 years from now, that they still can go out and enjoy. Are there any neighborhoods, buildings, landscapes, places, districts, anything that comes to mind that you really know and love?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places in Athens. You and I are both like avid runners, so we see a lot of it from the ground. I usually, my route right now takes me right through our neighborhood, the Newtown neighborhood, to Boulevard, which is just such a beautiful area. But yeah, like the Hot Corner is one of my favorite areas of downtown Athens. It's a historically African-American area that's just awesome. I mean, it's just such a cool looking place. And there's a lot of like really storied history there. But the Georgia Theater for sure, I'm so glad that was rebuilt and still there. And then the tree that owns itself is pretty cool. There's a lot of, I had a friend come, she's from England, and she came and stayed with her husband. I guess that was last year. And I showed them around, and it's funny because you don't really realize necessarily on a day-to-day basis when you live here, but when you're showing somebody your city, it's like, man, there's so much historical and cultural value to this place. So it's for sure important that we maintain the sense of that, because Athens has been pretty extensively developed without all of this, and it has become more apparent that, places do run the risk of being sort of bulldozed, and then, luxury student apartments get put in place, or like some franchised whatever. And the Athens that I love and that I grew up loving is weird. It's strange. It's multifaceted. It's local. It's a bunch of local businesses and bars and restaurants and community things like that that make this place interesting to be in. Otherwise, it's just sort of another suburb of Atlanta, and that's, to me, it's like that's not interesting at all. I for sure agree with what y'all are doing with historic Athens, and it's absolutely important.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. So it is interesting. A lot of times if I visit a city, I'll look up which sites in that city are on what's called the National Register of Historic Places. So I went to Chattanooga a couple years ago. I was immediately like, okay, what's on there? And a lot of cities our size, might have 4 to 12 places that are on the National Register. Athens, at the most recent count I saw, has 59. And so there's just so much rich history here. Yeah. So Dusty, keep Athens weird. I see Jeremy Field here. Let's throw that up. Dusty, my last question to you is a very open-ended one. So, it's very likely that someone is going to watch this interview someday outside of the 2020 audience. We're submitting this as a digital archive to our local libraries and research institutions. What I want you to do for a minute for us is talk to someone 100 years from now. If somebody 100 years from now is watching this interview, what would you want them to know about Athens in this moment?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is that I'm so proud of the city. The local government here did an absolutely amazing job at closing things down earlier than more or less the rest of Georgia. We shut down quickly, efficiently, and effectively without panic, without, just this extreme foreboding sense of doom or anything like that. They did a really good job. Kelly Gertz did an incredible job. He regularly gets on live streams and addresses the community here. So, first and foremost, I think it's important to recognize how well our community handled this, because a lot of places did not. A lot of places did the opposite. They handled this very poorly. So, it made me really proud to live here and to be a citizen of this community. I would say that it is interesting that we never saw this coming, and so it really blindsided us, and it really brought a lot of things about our culture and our society and our government, our interpersonal relationships. It brought a lot of those things under a microscope. So I would be interested to know in 100 years, how they're going to view this. Are we going to have a pivot of perspective on a lot of things? Things like our safety net. We don't have, in America, we don't have a societal safety net to stop, if some emergency like this happens again, because something like this could happen again. I hope it doesn't. But if it did, how are businesses going to stay afloat? How are people going to feed their children, without having to wait for a nebulous check from the federal government that may or may not come for a while. I didn't know if I was qualified because of, I just couldn't find out. So there's a lot of things that I think are interesting about our society that I dramatically hope will change because of this. Because I believe it is of my opinion and mine alone, not of the government or any of the organizations that I am a member of or part of. But I really believe that we have been operating on untenable, unreasonable ways of life for far too long. Without getting too soapboxy, we are now in a time where we are able to see these things so clearly because it's coming out on blast. I mean, case in point, George Floyd in Minnesota. That what is happening in that community right now, that city is in absolute turmoil, and there are people, everyday people are really putting that out there. Funny, I mentioned the whole TikTok thing, which is going to become a very interesting cultural nuance in 100 years, I'm sure. But people are on the ground recording with that app and immediately uploading it. And you're seeing firsthand the stream of what is going on the ground there. And it's unbelievable. I mean, it looks like a war zone. It looks like places that I was in Afghanistan. So what happened there and why that is going down, those are things, these racist, malignant aspects of our society, these uncaring, just uncompassionate, disassociative manners of which we live this American dream are as I said, untenable. And I just so desperately hope that when the air clears from this pandemic, people come out of their homes and come back to normalcy with a higher sense of compassion and community, because we have all experienced this together. You know, nobody, I know it seems a little strange for some people because we're inside our homes much of the time and we're not able to really commiserate in a more physical sense. But yeah, you know, I think that we can all come out of this understanding that every last one of us went through this together. And that is a abiding bond, whether people realize it yet or not. So it doesn't matter, you know, like when I meet somebody that I run into from the military, you know, it doesn't matter if I serve with them at all. We have that bond because we've been through really tough circumstance. And now every single person in the world can have that. Hey, like, I don't like any of the music you like. I don't like any of the movies you like. I'm an atheist. You're a Christian, whatever. But remember that year where we had to stay inside and we couldn't do any of the things we love. I mean, there is some power to that. So I really hope that that we come out of this and we kind of enter a new era of community and connection. So.
Well, I share that hope, Dusty. I really hope so. We're going to go and wrap up here, although I think we could spend so much more time, Dusty. There's so much that I wish we had more time to talk about. We've had some discussions internally about whether, given the expected timeline of this pandemic, whether it'll be necessary to check back in later this fall and do a follow-up series. If so, I'd love to have you back and get an update from you on how things are going. But thanks again for coming on the program. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, many thanks.
Of course. So folks, real quick, after this program, if you'd like to head over to the Athens Welcome Center page, like I said, they're doing a live cast as we speak. I am just going to very briefly flash this on the screen. Again, reminding you that we are doing this each weekday at 1 o'clock. Next week, for example, we are going to have some really interesting discussions. We're planning on talking to Joshua Jones, photographer extraordinaire for the Athens Banner Herald. He actually captured Porch Fest, including a shot I remember last year of Vision Video, and I think the pizza skulls you guys had out at the concert. And Josh is one of these people that once you know what he looks like, any event you go to in Athens, he's somehow miraculously there. I think there's 3 of them. Then the next day we will talk to Blake Odd, news reporter for the for Flagpole. Then Jessica Rothaker, who runs Heirloom, Chris Herron, who runs Creature Comforts, and we'll round out the week with Commissioner Jerry Neesmith. So we really want to welcome you all back next week at 1 o'clock on the Facebook page for Historic Athens. I'm going to go and pull this back so we can say goodbye to everyone properly. But Dusty, thanks again for making time here. You and I are going to jump offline. Anything else that you want to say before we head out?
No, just check out the band, Vision Video, visionvideoband.com. We've got some merch for sale. Help support us. Stream it on Spotify or wherever. Yeah, come hang out online, and look forward to seeing everybody once all this is a distant memory.
Distant memory. All right. Well, thanks for the work you're doing out there. We really appreciate it, Dusty. You and I are going to go offline now. Thanks to everyone out there. Be safe. Treat the weekend like a weekend if you're lucky enough to have one. And we will be back on Monday at 1 p.m. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Take care.